Mhm. Morning.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Professor.
Hey, Beatrice.
Hi,
Hi,
Professor.
Professor.
Hi there. Hey, Dimitri. Hey,
Hello,
Hung. Hey, Lydia.
Professor.
Hi there.
Good evening, Professor.
Hi, Nita. I hope you are all doing well. Hey, Barbara.
Hi, teacher. I'm sorry, Professor. Somebody told me that I don't have to say teacher because Professor has, more studies and
Yeah, I know. You know, I
forgot.
care. You know that it's very important to me, Barbara. It's, I really care about it. No,
Okay.
I only like professor when I'm trying to impress Americans, I really do feel like a teacher more than anything else.
Okay. Okay.
But, yeah, professor sounds fancier,
Yeah, I called somebody teacher and they say, no, we are professor here. And I was, okay. So I don't know what is the difference between teacher and professor. For me, both are the same, In
Howard.
Spanish, we say both are the same, but here, okay.
In English, that's an ego. That's an ego thing, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. We got a lot of people here. It's good to see you guys. This week back has been really slow in my other classes. Man. But we've got a nice group of people here already. That's awesome. Guys, what are we going to do for another 4 weeks? I'm so tired. I'm so done. I want to be done so bad. Hey,
Me too.
I just feel like we've learned enough, but we'll see what we can do here.
Hello, Professor.
Hey, Alexandra.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can we discuss about grammar writing?
3, I think we're going to do it next week since it's still not technically due. I want to show you the answers next week.
Okay, because we have one sentence give me sick.
Oh no, don't be sick. No.
I can
confused, but don't be sick. Oh no.
I can sleep. I think about the sentence.
Oh my
Me too.
goodness.
I was thinking about one sentence and I already asked somebody and they said, no, I don't know. I said, really? And I was thinking about it. Oh my goodness, this is difficult. I don't know.
Okay, let's see. Well, we have 18.
I have 3 various answers, and maybe this one. No, it's not look.
Yes.
Maybe this. Oh, it's maybe this. So I have 3 variants.
I've got 18 people submitted it. That's why I'm nervous. There's a lot of people. Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
it's
9.
all vacation because
I know.
This vacation you relax and can't study before.
I know.
After vacation.
For teachers too, I'm telling you, I'm like, ugh, I do not want to go. I'm done. I feel very done. So believe me, for your teachers too, or your professors,
Yeah, professors.
That was my plan, is to show you the answer key next week. That was my plan.
Okay, thank you.
Professor,
Yeah.
I sent you an email, but please ignore it.
Oh, I didn't ignore it, but I read it, but I didn't have time to reply to you before.
I realized that I was misreading or misunderstanding about looking for 10 sentences and not for the verb phrases. So just ignore my email.
Okay.
I
didn't ignore
about that.
But I didn't ignore it, but now I don't have to reply. Like I said, I saw it and I was just sending emails and talking, and I had other meetings and stuff today. So I just, I didn't have time to reply.
Just ignore it. I was wrong. I'm wrong.
Okay.
I also have the same question about 10, but I don't have 10 verb phrase. I have 13 maybe.
Me too.
Yeah. So
there are not 10. But I was confused about sentences. I was looking for 10 sentences instead of the verb phrases.
Yes, I also, but
I have 13 too.
then I see, oh, it's not sentence, it's about phrase, but I have more phrase. Maybe it's wrong, but not. I see this more phrase.
Well, me too. I am like you. Maybe I'm wrong too.
I'll show you next week. I'm more certain, like, let's do it next week, just because, again, several people emailed me just saying that they needed more time, or, you know, whatever, family, they got sick, or, you know, life happens. And like you said, Alexandra, during the break, you know, so I will, I think here's my idea is we'll take a little break from verbs. We've been talking about verbs for like a month. Let's take a little verb break today. But then I will give you all the answers, the answer key for Grammar Writing 3 next week, answer all your questions. And then I think it'll be good to get a little break from verbs. And then next week, it'll even be more clear. And then, you know, it is that first week after the break is very strange sometimes. So I think let's do that. Let's do that. And then if I can, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully I can grade Grammar Writing 3 really quickly, because it's the same for everybody. You know, grading the other grammar writings can take a very long time because everybody has there's different answers, you know, for all of your writing. So that's my plan, is that I can grade Grammar Writing 3 very quickly and then show you all the answers together next week. So that's the idea. So like I said, I don't like that you're up at night worrying about grammar, but I do like that you're thinking about it. Hopefully not too much, you know, hopefully not too much.
I couldn't sleep.
Ay, ay, ay.
You know, Professor, this time, all sentences that I see, I make analysis of where is subject, where is you infected me this
Oh,
analysis.
infection.
Infection, this analysis.
Well,
All sentence, I write essay in this my writing, and I think, oh, where is my subject? Where is my predicative? So it's work. It's work.
Yes, that is my dream. I don't, you know, infection we can talk about, but it is my dream that this class will sort of change the way you think about sentences, right? And then, like I said, after this class, you don't need to identify every part of speech. You don't need to think with a very small detail eye forever after this. But during this class, I do hope that it changes the way you understand English sentences. So that's good. I see Lydia with your hand. Yes, what's up?
Oh.
I hear lots of different sounds. Nita, I'm going to mute you because I want to hear Lydia first. I saw her hand. Lydia, please.
Yeah, thank you. We will have next week another chance to resubmit this assignment, the writing 3.
Good question. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. My answer is probably, because if people are worried about points, but I am going to show you the answers next week. So yeah, probably is the answer. Let me think about it though.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's probably, it's more important to me that you understand your mistakes than the points. So probably, yeah, probably.
For us, both is important.
Yes, I know. Remember, a 90 is still an A. There's no difference between a 90 and a 100 at ARC. Just remember that. Nita, are you still there, and do you still have a question?
Yes, Professor. Actually, my question is about the grading, Professor. I'm not happy with my grades. So you didn't mark some assignments, like for the grammar 1 and 2. 1, yeah.
If it's individual or something about a specific assignment, Nita, text me or email me, because I do not know what you're talking about, and it'll be best to talk about it one-on-one.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Professor, my classroom, they analyze the parts of speech in the the writing tree, but you didn't ask for to analyze the part. You just asked for the verb form or what is their tense, what tense are they. So we need to unwrite.
Yeah, again, if it's about your individual grade, Nita, email me or text me because I don't know and I can't take the time to look at individual student grades right now in class.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, let's get started. Like I said, today we're going to take a little break from verbs. I do want to give people, if they have any burning questions, but it is week 13, Thursday, April 21st. It is good to see you and hear your voices. I hope you're all well and took some time away from the computer screen. Oh my goodness, it was so nice. And then when I had to get back on the computer on Monday, I was so sad. Oh my gosh. Okay, here we go. Here's the plan for today. I did want to give you some basic information about the final exam. Of course, that's going to make people feel afraid and anxious. We were just talking about grades, but I'll give you some basic information about that today. Then, as I say here, finishing up verb tenses. So I just wanted to give people some time if they had specific questions or ideas, examples they wanted to look at. We can do that. And again, as I said, I will give you the answer key for grammar writing 3 next week. So we will talk a little bit more, obviously, about verb phrases and verb tenses, but I don't want to just jump completely to tonight's topic, which, as I promised, we would talk about commas, everybody's favorite topic in English sentences. So I want to talk about the comma rules and the it's tutorial 15 in language power, which we're going to go through a little bit tonight together, look at some examples, and as always, answer your questions for you. So that is the plan for this evening, this afternoon. Now that it's so sunny, I don't know, afternoon, evening. Okay, here's the information about the final exam. Okay. So as I say here, I'm just going to read so that this is clear, hopefully. I will introduce the final exam on our final Zoom meeting. Our final Zoom meeting is Thursday, May 12th, right? The final exam will then open at the end of our final Zoom meeting. So our Zoom meeting ends at 6:20, and then the final exam will open, right? So available, it will be available to you. You will then have until 8:45 p.m. on Monday, May 16th to submit the final exam. Now, that's a very specific time, Jeff. Why is it that day and that time? And it's because, I'll put this in the chat so people can look at it too, but you know, this is why this is available for everybody, all ARC students, right? This is a link to the ARC final exam schedule. Right? This is from the college. This is not even from the ESL department. This is from the college for all teachers and all students. So if you look at the evening class exam schedules, right, we meet between 5 and 6:25 on Monday, Wednesday. Well, there you see the time, right? Actually, I should change this. I'm giving you an extra hour, but that's fine. Monday, May 16th. If we were going to have a regular test, we would have it that day, right? Monday, 5:45, it'd say, okay, that's when we have our live test. But that's not how I'm gonna do it, right? So again, my job, I have to give you a timed exam. Some teachers choose to do that to say, well, the timed exam is from 5:45 to 7:45. You only have those 2 hours. That's not how we're doing it in this class. The exam will open on the 12th. It will be due at 8:45 on the day of your scheduled final exam. Now, here's the thing I want to make very clear, though. Because this is the final exam and the rule is from the school, I cannot accept any final exams after 8:45 that day. Okay, so you have what? I think it's like 5 or 6 days or something like that. But if you send it to me at 8:46, I have to give you a 0. So please, 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 just make sure you submit your final exam by 8:45 p.m. on Monday the 16th. Okay.
Maybe you should put 8:40.
Yeah, I should just say 7 o'clock, and that way
Yes.
people have a little cushion.
Like in Mexico, they do sometimes.
That's like
for
a, yeah,
people to
like
be on time.
a psychological trick. Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's to help your thinking. Okay, so people will probably think, what is the final exam? Okay, now we're talking about it. What's going to be on it? What's going to be on it? All I will say is it is not hard. It is not a big grammar test. It really is just going to be more like one of the discussions. It's really going to be a chance for you to write. It is not a big 100 question quiz. Okay,
Oh,
I will
good.
tell you, yes, I will tell you much more about it
Yes, Michael.
again. And you know how I teach now. This is, I'm not going to scare you or surprise you, but I am going to make you think and I am going to make you write, whether you like it or not. So that's kind of what the final exam will be, instead of, you know, past perfect progressive verb tense quiz. We're not doing that. Okay. Okay. Any questions about this information about the final exam?
No, but I am happy to hear how it's going to be, because I was afraid that you will have that kind of exam, like a verb.
Yeah, 2 hours.
No, I really like what you're going to do.
Yeah, I do too. I think, again, you know me, I understand when Nita says that, but grades are important, and or I think Lydia said that, I'm sorry, but yeah, grades are important too. I understand. But you know, it's going to be a final opportunity for you to think about what you learned in this class and tell me about it. That's really what it's like. Anything else? Low stress, you know me, low stress, hard work, low stress, hard work, low stress. I hope.
For the
Cool.
final exam, are we going to type down a lot or just answer just some questions?
That's it. Answer some questions.
Okay.
It's not an essay. Oh, no. It's
Oh, no,
nothing
because
crazy.
I don't think that I'm really good typing down in
No, it's nothing crazy. It's
Okay.
nothing crazy. It's going to be answer some questions.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll share more about this as we get closer and just remind you guys. But then, of course, this final day, the 12th, is really where I will introduce the final exam and let you ask questions about it too, because, you know, I'm not going to teach anything new on the last day of the class. I'm not a monster, you know. So I will, hopefully everything will be very clear Thursday the 12th, and then you've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You've got like 4.5 days basically to complete the exam.
Okay.
Okay. So I do want to talk commas, but before I do that, I'm just curious, are there any questions or anything that people were, maybe it's about grammar writing 3, which we'll talk about next week, but any ideas or questions or anything about verb tenses, anything we've talked about before the break that you were like, I've got to ask this, I'm still confused, before we start the comma topic today? Anything on your mind today?
I have one question about
Sure.
my sentence.
Sure. An example, let's do it.
One moment, please. I want to copy in the chat the sentence.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
And then I see Nita's got a question as well.
About word comparing. What is this part of speech? And it looks different. I have the same different part of speech in Ukrainian language. It's not gerund, it's not verb.
Yeah.
It's like verb and adverb together in Ukrainian, but comparing it, what is comparing?
Comparing?
Yeah, she's okay. Let me read the sentence. Her sentence is, I put it on let me make it a little bit larger here. You revealed this to me through grammatical analysis, comma, And now I analyze each sentence and find the subject and predicate, comma, comparing it with the Ukrainian language.
Maybe it's not correct sentence.
No, it sounds good. It sounds like academic writing. It absolutely does. Because
I see two subjects. First, you
yep,
you reveal it. Reveal it. It's
revealed, yeah, revealed.
revealed.
That's the verb.
It's
Yep.
verb. Then I analyze. I
Yeah,
subject,
I agree. I agree.
analyze and find. It's parallel.
Yep, you got two compound verbs here, right? I analyze each sentence and find.
Find. What is comparing?
Yeah, well, it's interesting too, because I was going to say this sounds like academic writing because this is actually a very nice connection to our lesson here about commas, because we do this all the time in college style writing, right? Where we have well, we know this isn't a clause, right? Let's start with the basic stuff. This isn't a clause, right? We
Clause.
don't have a verb. We don't have a verb here, right? So this is some kind of phrase. So comparing it with you could say, just for example, something like this, right? So this phrase, we could say, comparing it with the Ukrainian language, comma, I now analyze my English sentences. We've talked a lot. Well, I've sort of given you some information about these introduction elements, these type of phrases we see at the beginning of sentences in academic style writing, especially. Yeah, what part of speech? What do you think it is? Well, if I made you choose one part of speech, Alexandra, what would you say?
I know in Ukrainian language, it's the separate part of speech. It's a verb with adverb together.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can say it is comparing, and
Yep.
then it is verb
Yep.
in present progressive. But I see this way all time in when I read some books.
Yep.
I see that way using in English, but I don't know what is. Maybe some.
Yeah, I think you're right. We could do this too. Certain verbs love to have this type of certain verbs. Let me be clear here, because compare is a verb, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can use
Yes.
compare as a verb. I will compare this. She compared me to whatever. But you're right. Some verbs like to use this type of verb form. So for example, compared to me, comma, she studies very hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll just give you my answer. If I had to choose one part of speech, I'd call it an adverb. I call it an adverb and suggest that even if it doesn't modify the entire clause here, it definitely modifies the entire phrase. Now, again, if a student wanted to tell me that they wanted to call this a preposition because I have an object, I have a noun after this, I wouldn't be that wouldn't bother me. But you see with English, because again, we don't have one, academy making rules here, that you could analyze it a few different ways. I'd like to say that this is an adverb, this is a pronoun, and then we very clearly have our prepositional phrase here, right? And here's the object noun phrase after the preposition, the Ukrainian language, right? So I think you could analyze it a few different ways. You're right, Alexandra. I'd call it an adverb. I think if I had to just make one choice.
Because when I see that gerund, it's not gerund, because comparing is good way from blah blah blah.
Exactly.
It will be gerund, but it's not gerund.
No, it's exactly. No, I think you're right. I don't think it's acting like a noun. Here's the noun, and it's modifying the noun. Again, I don't think it's modifying only the noun though. I think it's modifying, like I said, at least the entire phrase And maybe you could even say it's similar to this, right?
Mhm.
Right, and again, we're going to see examples of this when we look at the comma rules here. We've talked, I've talked about this, and we're going to look at it more specifically with these the lesson tonight. English loves to do this. Put some kind of one single word or a phrase in the beginning of a sentence, and then basically that modifies the action in the rest of the sentence. And that's why it's really common to call that an adverb phrase. Individual parts of speech may change, but the way that it functions in the sentence, I think it's kind of modifying everything that comes after it, you know?
So it's just adverb clauses, yes?
That's what I'd say.
uh,
Again-
comparing it with the Ukrainian language, it's adverb clauses.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And again, like you talk to people with PhDs in linguistics, you might have a different analysis, but I think that analysis is totally appropriate, Alexandra. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. Dimitri, did I see your hand go up and then down? Any ideas or questions here?
Yeah, I have a question.
Please.
So comparing it with the Ukrainian language, is this a passive voice or not?
No, and I think passive voice will be the last new thing I talk about on week, 2 weeks from today. But
Okay,
um,
because every time the passive one I type something and Word Word program, I mean, usually type me that making a notification, so I did the passive voice and passive voice every time. I don't know what is it.
I can, okay,
I mean, I know, but I don't understand.
yeah, I can, and I can say more about this again in a couple of weeks here. I have a PowerPoint for
All right,
that
thank you.
specifically, but that'd be something like, instead of comparing it with the Ukrainian languages, I now analyze my English sentences. English grammar has been compared to Ukrainian grammar. Or, and here's another example, scientists study. Oh, here's a better example using this theme here. Linguists study English and Ukrainian grammar. Let's do compare. Let's keep the verb the same. Okay, what's in a sentence like this? Linguists compare English and Ukrainian grammar. Where's my subject?
Linguist.
Yes. And where's my verb?
Compare.
Definitely agree. Now watch the magic trick that we can do here.
Compare. Mhm. It's
Ah.
Uh-huh. English and
object and subject replace.
English and Ukrainian grammar has been compared. Let's keep it and I'll keep the tense even the same here. English and Ukrainian grammar linguists, I'll keep the tense the same here, excuse me. Linguists have compared. Let's just make sure I keep everything the same here. The tense is the same here, right? Have compared. What verb tense is this?
Present perfect.
Thank you. Present perfect. Absolutely. Linguists have compared. So now we have English and Ukrainian grammar has been compared. What's my subject in this sentence?
English and
Ukrainian grammar.
Okay. And what's my verb?
Being
Compare.
Yes. And now, so here, Dimitri's question, and again, we'll see more about this in 2 weeks. This will be the last sort of topic we study. What happens in the passive voice is the subject and the object switch places. So you put in this sentence, English and Ukrainian grammar, that's the subject, or excuse me, that's the object, right? That's the thing that has been compared. But in the passive voice, we change it, right? And we make the subject into the object. And when we do that, we have to add this extra auxiliary, right? Has been compared. Here's a much simpler example here. So this is like your 5 minutes.
Professor,
yes, please.
both are in past.
The tense, now here's the thing. The tense doesn't matter. The most important thing here is this auxiliary be. This is what we need when we change it to the passive voice.
Passive voice. Okay, passive voice. Okay.
Yep. So this was Dimitri's question. And again, like I said, I'll show you more of this in a couple of weeks, but the basic rule is when you switch the subject and the object. So in grammar, in language power, when we look at it in a couple of weeks, this is the example she has in the book, right? The boy kicks the ball, right? The boy kicks the ball. We understand the action, the boy does the action, the ball receives the action, right? But, and let's again keep it in the past tense here.
The ball.
By the ball.
And all time we use by in the passive voice, yeah?
Usually,
Before-
very often,
Usually.
very often, yes, very often, yes. But again, the thing that really sticks out here is this auxiliary be. This auxiliary be is really important for making the passive voice. So if, Dimitri, if your Microsoft Word is telling you passive voice, look for the be verb, because that's your, that's like the #1 thing that the computer is looking for. And usually the, you know, I don't know, this changes a little bit, right? Some teachers will say the passive voice is terrible. You
I
should
mean,
never-
yeah, my
blah, blah,
my
blah.
next my question, additional question. So the passive voice is a mistake or not?
Not really, because, okay. This is it, you know, it depends what you're studying, Dimitri. Like, for example, I always say this to students who are studying, we have so many students who are studying nursing or medicine in our ESL program, right? People who want to work in hospitals or healthcare or study nursing. Okay, so let's say if you're reading a topic in a health class, like in a medical class, this type of passive voice construction is really, really common, right? So you might see a sentence like, have, right? Scientists have searched for a cure for cancer for years, right?
Have been studied by scientists.
Exactly. And now I love that Barbara was saying has been studied by scientists, but notice we can, one thing is sometimes, and again, I'm just preparing you, I'm not even saying good, bad, right, or wrong, but in a science textbook, sometimes they'll just delete the object and they'll just leave it unclear because we sort of understand, well, by who? By medicine, by all scientists, just kind of in general, right? And so Dimitri, in a science class or in a medical research book, you see the passive voice all the time. It's not bad writing at all. So it really just depends what you're reading. And you know me, I think the most important thing is to just have some awareness about it. And I'd say the #1 thing to be aware of if your computer is saying too much passive voice, look for this auxiliary be, right? Scientists have searched for a cure for cancer for years. A cure for cancer has been researched for over 20 years. And I love what Barbara was saying. By who? By scientists. We could say anything. The medical field, right? I mean, like, again, certain disciplines like this sort of general feeling. It's just sort of like a statement of truth. And one way to get that feeling to a reader is to use this passive voice. So is it good or bad or right or wrong? Depends. I will say, even in a nursing class for my students studying nursing, you don't want to have every sentence in your paragraph be passive voice. That will start to sound strange, right? If it's, you know, 3 or 4 passive voice, I'm trying to think how I could even do that. I'll keep it simple. The ball was kicked by the boy. So the, oh.
The ball was the ball.
Oh.
This is terrible. This is terrible. I'm stopping here. I'm just proud of myself that I could make a sentence like this, but notice, hopefully it will sound very strange in English. The ball was kicked by the boy. And maybe I'll make the relationship even more clear. So the window was broken by the kicked ball. The man was upset by the broken window, so the boy was yelled at by the man. Now, to
I
me,
will write it different.
yes, this sounds like it just sounds weird. It sounds like too many
Yeah.
words. It sounds like, why not just say like the boy broke the window, or the man yelled
boy.
at the boy, right? The man, hopefully this makes much more sense to you, right? The man yelled at the boy. I mean, that's much more clear than the boy was yelled at by the man. Right?
Mhm.
Now, what's weird about the passive voice is grammar-wise, the meaning is the same, right? The meaning really is the same. A native speaker is still going to understand there was an old man. Well, there was a man, he was yelling. There was a boy, he was being yelled at. Or a man, a boy, man yells at who? At the boy. So this is partly just a style question. And what you do hear a lot, Dimitri, is active voice. Active voice means the grammatical subject is also the sort of meaning the one who does the action. When they're the same, that makes the sentence much more clear and direct. But sometimes you want to speak more generally, right? Instead of just being really direct. The other place you'll see this, and then I'll show you comma stuff.
But Professor,
Tell
it's
me.
bad to, because I have the same problem. I use Grammarly to write my emails at work
Yeah.
to help me. And it always is telling me about passive voice, not to use passive voice. But if I say the meeting was canceled, I had to use passive voice.
Well, I like that example. Now, interesting example, Beatrice, because in fact, the next example I was going to say is school and work. We love and what else is, and politicians. Politicians love to say this because when you say something like mistakes were made, that sounds much softer than I made a mistake. Right? Or
Yes.
the meeting was canceled is different than saying, whatever, Professor Jeff canceled the meeting, right? Both might be appropriate. The other place that I say school because very often, syllabi for courses are very passive voice because teachers don't want to say, you will lose, wait, how do people say this on their syllabus? In this assignment, you will be asked to write 500 words. That sounds much softer than I am asking you to write 500 words. So again, I don't want to say that it's a negative, Beatrice, but notice that when I say something like the meeting was canceled, what I'm not explicitly saying is who canceled it, right? Or
Yeah.
mistakes, again, politicians, mistakes were made. Well, who made the mistake? Well, mistakes were made. Who made the mistakes? It doesn't matter. We're not talking about that right now. So again, it's not always just a grammar thing, the passive voice. It's a deeper meaning thing. Now, Beatrice, it might be totally appropriate to say the meeting was canceled. Well, it doesn't matter who canceled it. That's why we use the passive voice. You know what I mean? Like, but sometimes people use the passive voice to avoid or not say who did the action. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so otherwise I had to write down, the meeting was canceled by the director.
Exactly.
I couldn't understand how to put it. Right now, you just let me see something because every time that I see don't use so many passive voice, I couldn't say which other way for me to say it. And you just gave me a very clear sample.
Yeah, that's my
to
job,
specify
Beatrice.
who did. Oh my God.
That's my job. And it's the same thing I will say to Dimitri, right? Like if you're if you're getting that Grammarly advice, so two things, everything Beatrice said there was perfect, right? Like you need to decide on the type of meaning you want in your email, in your essay, whatever. It might be totally appropriate to just say the meeting was canceled. We don't need to say who, but that's one thing, right? The meaning you want to share. But if you're like Dimitri and you're sort of going like, well, I don't even know, why is it telling me so much passive voice? The biggest clue that I want to keep highlighting for you is, how do we do this in the way that we've talked about grammar this semester? We have this extra auxiliary be verb, right? Mistakes were made. Well, made is still the verb, right? And canceled is still the verb, and asked is still the verb, right? But we have these auxiliary be's. And Beatrice said something a few minutes ago that, you know, in my PowerPoint in a couple weeks, we'll look at this with a few different tenses, but tense doesn't matter, right? Tense doesn't matter. Here, simple past, right? Simple past made, and it's the same thing here, were made. What's weird then is that this is my auxiliary, simple past, and then this becomes the past participle. Now that's weird if you think about it from the way we've analyzed stuff. Here, made is just the verb simple past, right? That's a difference. So you could say that our parts of speech change a little bit, but the big clue, if Grammarly is saying too much passive voice, search in your own sentences for those auxiliary B's. Look for the auxiliary B, because you must use auxiliary B to make the passive voice, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I use it, but I didn't know how to change and not to use the passive voice. I was like, okay.
The meeting,
the difference. Yeah.
The meeting was canceled. She canceled the meeting.
Okay.
Right? That's it. Dimitri, does that make a little more sense to you?
Yes, thank you.
Andale.
Thank you. Meeting is very good example, because it's clearly we clearly see this relationships with
I agree.
object and subject.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, did a big clue for B.
Yeah,
You
me
got
too.
it.
It's a big clue.
Beatrice, your example helped everybody. And of course, right? Why do you guys know now the way I teach the classes, examples from our real life is always the best examples, always. Way better than a textbook, way better than a textbook. Cool. And like I said, I've got a longer lesson about this, but what we just did is like the basics of it, right? And then it's just practice. And it does get more difficult when we're putting it into more complicated verb tenses, right? Because we all know now, after 3 months of this class, the more auxiliaries you have, the more, the more parts you have, the more tricky it can be, but still. Okay, cool. Commas? We've got time. Okay, I'm going to, just for time, I'm going to just I'm going to show the textbook on the screen. If you have your textbook with you and you want to look along on your own paper, you can absolutely do that. But we're going to look at the big 3 comma rules. That's Language Power Tutorial 15. It starts on page 231. So if you've got your paper book and you want to do it with me, or you just want to look on the screen, whatever is best for you, okay? And just to make sure, everybody, can you see the book? I should be sharing my screen, but can everybody see the textbook here? Okay, perfect. Okay, so here's what she says, and I won't read the entire chapter, but I will highlight some really important stuff that I think is great. So it starts with this picture of the student talking to the teacher, and the student says, I have trouble with punctuation. I just don't have any comma sense. And then she begins, do you ever feel insecure about comma rules when you're writing? Many writers do. There are many different comma rules in English, and some have exceptions. This tutorial covers the 3 most common errors made in comma usage by college student writers. And as I said to you guys at the beginning of the semester, if you master the rules behind these 3 errors, you will probably eliminate, get rid of about 90% of the comma errors in your writing. And that's why I love this book and I love tutorial 15. If you get comfortable with these 3 rules, you can solve the vast majority of all comma errors, okay? So let's look at an example here. We're going to see if we can start to understand some of her rules. There's this discover activity here on page 232. And I'm going to read through it and then we'll just kind of do it together here. But so as it says on 232, we will begin with an exercise in which you'll analyze a portion of a text to help you see what you already know about comma usage. Read through the excerpt below. Highlight and number every comma, we'll do that together, and then complete the chart. So I'm just going to read through it, and then we're going to talk about it. So on November 5th, comma, 2010, comma, Officer Rick Morales arrested Ashley Evans, comma, a 19-year-old college student, comma, at her home in Eugene, comma, Oregon, on charges of possession of illegal drugs and drug paraphernalia, comma, serving alcohol to minors, comma, and various lesser charges. Evans argues that officers illegally obtained evidence seized at the time of her arrest, comma, including a beer keg and drug paraphernalia, comma, and that the court should exclude this evidence from admission at her trial. When police officers enter Ms. Evans' home without her consent or a warrant, comma, they violated her rights under the 4th Amendment of the US Constitution. Okay, so I see people working, circling, maybe just noting them. Now she gives us an example here, number 1 on the side, right? She says, for each comma you highlighted, create an entry in the chart. Try to think about a possible rule or explanation for why that comma is used. So number 1, she says November 5th, comma, right? And then she writes, the comma separates the exact date and the year, right? So again, we're getting a big clue about one of the most common places that we use commas. So what about number 2? Where was comma number 2?
19 years old.
We do have a comment. We do have one
it's
comma before that.
2010. After
Yes.
2010.
Good, good. And I'm gonna, actually, I wasn't gonna do this, but let's do it. We can kind of do this together. Number of columns, we only need 3, I think.
Yeah, only 3 columns.
And I'll just sort of make a list here. Okay, so it was, and I'll zoom in here. On November 5th, comma, 2010. So this was November 5th, comma, and she says, comma, after date
Exactly.
before the month, right? That's kind of the rule there. Delete. the
She
column.
mentions also the year over there.
Yes, now we should talk about, now this is something else to think about, 2010. So now let's look about it. We do have a comma between 5 and the year, but let's look at everything that comes before this. On November 2010, comma, Officer Rick Morales arrested Ashley Evans. Where's the subject? Do we have, well, I'm going to tell you, we have a clause in here. Where's this clause? Where's the clause begin?
Officer Rick Morales arrest.
Andale, that's exactly correct. What part of speech is on?
It's
Preposition.
Yes, it is. It is
It's
a
what?
preposition. It's a preposition. On,
Oh,
in,
yeah, because
on, in, ab, to. So what's the noun? What's the object noun phrase for that preposition?
Officer Rick. Uh-huh.
Officer Rick is the subject.
Ashley
Officer Rick is the
Evans.
subject.
Ashley.
November 5th.
What was your question?
What is the object noun phrase for the preposition on?
The object is Ashley Evans.
I heard Dimitri say it. Dimitri,
On
get in
November
there.
5,
Yes.
2010.
Remember, month, I've got month, date, years. Those are nouns. And this is just like saying in the bed, on the phone, by the car, on the roof. This is on, and here's my noun phrase. So this
Oh, the
is
noun
just
phrase.
it's the object of the preposition, remember? So this is just the object noun phrase for the preposition on November 5th, 2010. So really we could include the whole thing here kind of, right? On November 5th, 2010. So what do we have here? We have a prep phrase
Oh my God.
before the first clause in the sentence, right? And again, as we talked about, and you're going to see when I read to you here and continue reading, this is one of those introductory elements before the first clause. And remember, don't get too scared by this because it's the exact same thing. Honestly, this is like, oh, Alexander's great question. If we did something like this, actually, comma, right? Or comparing it with the Ukrainian language, comma, or even something really simple like yesterday or last year, comma, I went to LA. It can be a very nice, short, simple sentence, you guys, right? But this is a phrase that we put at the beginning of a sentence before the clause, right? And again, I've talked about this, but we're going to see the explanation in the rule here. This is one of the basic rules, right? You can have these introductory elements in English sentences, especially in college level reading. And we almost always put a comma, right? So she's doing it a little crazy. She's showing you, she's giving you 2 commas here, but this would be the same as, it would be the same grammatically if instead of on November 5th, 2010, right? If instead of that it said 2 years ago, comma, Officer Rick Morales arrested Ashley Evans, all the grammar is the same, right? All the grammar is exactly the same. And that would still just be a phrase that comes at the beginning of a sentence before we get the first clause. Does that make sense?
No.
Yes, yes.
Not yet. Beatrice says not yet. We'll see some more examples. We'll see more examples. Okay, where's our next comma? Where's our next? We won't do the whole thing because it'll take too long. I want to show you the rules, but where's our next comma? Officer Rick Morales arrested Ashley Evans.
Ashley Evans.
Exactly.
Person who arrested.
And it's worth talking about where's the comma after Evans? Where's the next comma after that? You're getting some help from your tutor. Yeah, we get another comma after, right? Ashley Evans, comma, a 19-year-old college student, comma, at her home in Eugene, Oregon, we know. Why do we need the comma after Eugene?
Because it's specification. Yeah,
between city and state in this example, right? And I think we've talked about this, but this could be in English. This is anything, anywhere. Sacramento,
Yes.
California, Mexico City, Mexico.
Professor, sometimes you use comma.
Go ahead, Nita, please go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting. It's like sometimes you use comma like more than one things like Sacramento, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Like we use comma in the middle of the 2 cities and.
Well, now that's coming up next. That's coming up next. Let me show you that in a second. But this is one of the special rules, right? In English, you need a comma between city and state, or sometimes even city and country, right? Right? Now, what Nita's talking about is the next one that I'll show you. But let's go back to this phrase here. A 19-year-old college student. Who is a 19-year-old college student?
Ashley.
So it is an additional information.
Yes, exactly. Phrase, yes. A noun. And we'll talk about this in a second. And then I want to get to the one that Nita was talking about. So on charges of possession. So here we go. Officer Morales arrested Ashley Evans, a 19-year-old college student, at her home in Eugene, Oregon, on charges of possession of illegal drugs and paraphernalia, comma, serving alcohol to minors, comma, and various lesser charges. So I've got a comma after paraphernalia, I've got a comma after minors, and then I've got this conjunction and, but it's not a coordinating conjunction. There's no subject after it. So I've got three things here. What do I really have here? It starts with an L.
Parallel.
List.
Thank you.
list,
Who said it? Was it
verb.
Dimitri? Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a list. This is a list of three things. Now, it's a list with three longer noun phrases. Remember, I've showed you sort of simple lists like I like pizza, apples,
Yes.
ice cream.
Mhm.
But really, remember, noun phrase, noun phrase, noun phrase, right? In this college textbook, they're just longer noun phrases on charges of possession of illegal drugs and paraphernalia. Well, look at that. Preposition, object noun phrase, preposition, adjective, noun. Right? I mean, like, we get a lot more words, but it's still just a noun phrase. So she was arrested on three different charges. Charge number 1, charge number 2, and lesser charges, right?
Mhm.
So lists. This is the basic, these examples in this first paragraph, you can go deeper on your own, but just to make sure I can introduce all of the rules before we finish here. These are the basic 3 rules she's going to teach us, and I'm going to explain them with more examples. But if you get comfortable with introductory elements, lists, and then as we already talked about with dependent and independent clauses, which comes first, you're going to be very happy and comfortable. Dimitri, please, and then I'll go to the next page.
Yeah, so maybe I'm wrong, but I think I read somewhere what in English rules, well, we didn't use the comma in the list if they have the similar meaning or something like this. I don't know.
We don't use commas if they have similar meaning. I'm not sure. There's some people don't like this comma right here. They like possession of illegal drugs and paraphernalia, comma, serving alcohol to minors, comma. Some people don't like this comma, and my Spanish speakers, this is the opposite rule, right? In Spanish, you would not put a comma here. You just, you keep the two phrases connected by the conjunction and. So this is a little bit different in English. But so I don't know if that's just a style thing, Dimitri, or I'm
Okay,
not sure.
maybe I'm wrong.
But in most classes, you're gonna have noun number 1, comma, noun number 2, comma, and noun number 3. That's the most common way to make a list in English. If a teacher in another class tells you don't do it, do what you got to do to get an A. But this is the most common way to do it, right? So let's look at some
Professor,
examples. Yeah, please.
You said you didn't mention anything about after the name. So every time after a name it goes a comma, like
No, I'll show
Ashley
you.
Evans.
I'll show you that one. I want to let Professor Ferris explain it because she'll explain it better than me just talking.
Okay.
Yep. I'll show you that. Let's look at that. Okay. So here's some, I'll read through this quickly and then we'll go to the rules, right? So it says here on page 234, understanding the big 3 comma rules. What is the main purpose of a comma? How is that purpose different from the main purpose of a period? In general, commas are used to separate ideas within a sentence for clearer communication. If commas are overused, my wonderful language learners, they can make writing seem choppy. If they are underused, especially in longer sentences, the omission can cause confusion. My wonderful Spanish speakers, where you do not need commas in written sentences. In many cases, whether or not you should add a comma depends on your own perception of sentence clarity. When writers are unsure about whether or not commas are needed, they tend to play it safe by either sprinkling, adding commas everywhere, or hardly using them at all. However, the good news is that there are some comma rules that are predictable and easy to learn. Here they are. The most common problems with commas are 1, overusing them, adding them when they're not necessary. 2, underusing them, omitting them when they are necessary. And 3, misusing commas, adding them when other punctuation marks might be better. And I do love this picture. It's kind of silly, but you imagine he has like a can of spray paint and it's got a comma on it. And when in doubt, this writer here in the picture is just going to spray his commas everywhere, all over the essay. So here's comma rule 1. Okay, over on page 235 now. Comma rule 1. Insert a comma between an introductory element and the rest of the sentence. Now here's what I've been saying all semester, right? What is an introductory element? Well, it can be a single word, a phrase, or if it's a dependent clause, let me say that again, dependent clause, it can be an entire clause that begins a sentence. These elements introduce the main information in the sentence. Look at the following 3 examples. The introductory elements are separated from the main body of the sentence with a comma. Notice that the main part of the sentence includes at least 1 complete independent clause. Again, I'll say highlight that, circle it, underline it in your book, right? That's what I said in our first example. Where's the first independent clause? That's going to give you big and important information about where the comma should go. So for example, therefore, comma, 1 should, let me zoom in here. I feel like this is probably a little small on the screen. Therefore, comma, 1 should come to class every day. So by the rule, Professor Ferris is saying this has to be an independent clause, right? What's the subject here?
1 should come to class every day.
1.
Yep. 1 is like a very fancy pronoun. It'd be like saying someone, a person, you, he, she, they. 1 should come. What's the verb?
Come.
Exactamente. Therefore, comma, 1 should come to class every day. Next one, last quarter, comma, I slept in too often and missed my 8 o'clock class. What's my subject in the clause?
I.
Yep.
I
Where's my verb?
slept.
Slept and missed.
Yep.
And
Good.
missed.
Yes, I love it. There's that parallel, like we were talking about. There's that parallel. Absolutely. We've got compound verbs there. Now, again, let's look at the next example. And remember, the introductory element might be a full clause as long as it is dependent. So, although there was no specific attendance requirement, I did poorly in the class because I got too far behind. Where's my subject in this first dependent clause?
There.
Yep. And what's the verb?
Was.
Yep. And what's my subordinator?
There. Although, yeah.
Yep. Even though, although, remember, I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint now. We looked at this from a different point of view when we talked about phrases and clauses. Remember,
Mhm.
we talked about this with dependent and independent, right?
Right.
So what's the independent clause?
I enjoy it.
Exactly. And this, when we change the order of the clauses, this is still independent. But remember, the rule that we talked about is when you have the dependent clause first, you always need a comma. Well, notice that fits really nicely with Professor Ferris's rule here, right? If you've got a dependent, if you've got anything, if you've got one word, a nice short phrase, or even a full clause, if it's got a subordinator, you gotta have a comma. Notice how many clauses do we have after the comma in her example here?
I did poorly in the class because 2.
Two class.
Exactly right. And which one is the independent clause?
I got two
I
for.
was poorly in the class. No, both.
Yes. Nope.
No,
Because what's because? It's because a fanboy or a subordinator?
Subordinated.
It definitely is, Barbara.
Coordinated,
Yep. So here's my independent clause. Oh, I want to make sure it's clear. My independent clause is I did poorly in the class. That's my independent clause. And again, notice it's no mistake that the comma comes right before the subject of the independent clause. And notice, you guys, that's exactly like these other examples, even when it's only one adverb, therefore, comma, subject of the independent clause. Last quarter, comma, I, subject of the independent clause. You still with me?
Yes.
Good.
Professor.
Question, yeah, please, questions.
Professor, if like sometime even though like all thought they come in a center, like a center of the the middle of the sentence, we need to use a comma too, like in this sentence that
No.
we.
Nope. And remember, this is another always rule. If the independent clause comes first in a sentence like this, when we only have two clauses, right? We've got, what type of sentence is this? Does anybody remember? One independent, one dependent.
So no need to
complex.
complex.
Yeah, I heard someone, I think Barbara or Nita, I'm not sure.
No,
Yes,
me.
that was weeks ago. If you remember, amazing. Complex, this is a complex.
Yes.
Right. This is a complex sentence. The independent clause comes first, then we don't need a comma. But remember, and Professor Ferris is going to show us this next. You see how it's all starting to come together, my friends. In this example, how many clauses in this sentence? I enjoyed the class, comma, and I learned a lot.
Two.
Oh, two.
But is this a fanboy?
Yes.
Yes.
No, coordinated.
Or fine.
It is. It is. You got to be.
Fanboy.
Yeah,
It
fanboy.
is.
Yeah, sorry,
It is.
fanboy.
It is. It's a coordinating conjunction. That means it's a compound sentence. And by the way, this is the next comma rule. She shows us if you're connecting two independent clauses with a fanboy, comma, right? Comma. So as it says here, and just again for time, save your questions. We'll keep talking about it. But so this rule, again, rule number one, introductory element, even if it's a clause, the rule is simple. Whenever you have one of these introductory elements, use a comma to set it off, separate it from the rest of the sentence. A slight exception to the rule may happen if the sentence is really short, like 10 words or fewer. In a short sentence, comma, by the way, notice she's giving you good examples here. In a short sentence, prepositional phrase, comma, you, subject of the independent clause, you may omit the comma if you think its absence will not confuse your readers. However, comma, it, subject of the independent clause, is never wrong to have the comma here. Okay, so just for time, I'm going to go to the next page, but that's the basic rule, right? So I know we're going fast, but here it is in the recording, right?
Yeah.
Introductory element, comma, before the subject of the independent clause. That's your basic rule there.
The subject of the independent clause.
Exacto. Next run, rule number 2. This is exactly like Nita's excellent question a moment ago. And happily, you already learned it when we talked about phrases and clauses. Comma rule 2, insert a comma. Now here again, I'm on the next page, 236 in your book. Insert a comma before a coordinating conjunction followed by an independent clause. A coordinating conjunction is a word that joins two grammatically equal elements, two nouns or verbs, two prepositional phrases, or two independent clauses. Tutorial 1 introduced the acronym FANBOYS to you to help you remember the coordinating conjunctions for and nor, but, or, yet, so. The most commonly used coordinating conjunctions are and, but, and, or. I like so a lot too. Here's the key element of this rule. You need a comma before a coordinating conjunction when it separates two independent clauses, exactly like I just showed you. Look at these examples. The professor didn't have any attendance requirement, comma, but I still should have gone to class regularly. The class was at 8, comma, and I had a hard time getting up that early. What's the subject in this first clause here?
The professor
The professor.
Excellent. And what's the verb?
had
Thank you, Barbara. And what's the subject in this second clause?
I
Yep. And what's the verb?
have gone.
Good. Yeah, good. Absolutely. We've got a lot going on there, right? Still, adverb, should, modal auxiliary, have auxiliary, gone, past participle. Yes, absolutely. And here I've got a fanboy, right? Two
Yes.
independent clauses joined by a fanboy.
Mhm.
Let's see. And then she just explains this, but again, we talked about this, so that's why I'm going to go fast here. So she says in the next page, 237, in these examples, the coordinating conjunctions are highlighted and they join two independent clauses. That means the two clauses could stand alone as separate sentences without the conjunction. For example, the professor didn't have an attendance requirement, period. I still should have gone to class regularly. The class was at 8, period. I had a hard time getting up that early. Again, the rule is simple. When a coordinating conjunction joins two complete sentences, insert a comma before it. If the whole sentence is very short, you may be able to omit to skip the comma in the middle before the coordinating conjunction. However, inserting the comma is never wrong, right? One thing I want to say about this is, most people get this. Most students in this class get it. The biggest problem students have is actually they keep the comma, but they don't put in the conjunction. If you've ever seen me give you a comment saying comma splice, comma splice, comma splice, that means this.
If I say, we say, I joined the class because I learn a lot.
Now, do you need a comma? Do you need a comma or not?
Coordinate.
Do you need a comma or not, Nita?
No.
No.
Exactly, because this is a subordinator. This is not a fanboy.
Mhm.
But this is never correct, right? This is never correct. This is correct.
If I
This
use
is-
N, yeah.
This is correct. But this is never correct. And if you've done this class, you've probably seen me put a red box and just say comma splice. And everybody does this. Native speakers do this all the time. Okay, native speakers do this all the time. But just remember, this means you're almost there. Just don't forget your fanboy. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yes.
Or if you're like Nita and you want to put a subordinator, great. Just don't put the comma. Right?
Professor, if we use the subordinator in the first, like the first of the sentence, so we should need to use a comma too or not?
Yes, always. That's this rule. That's this rule, right, Nita?
Okay, so comma.
Always.
It's the first independent class. Okay.
Yep. So here, dependent clause, subordinator, dependent clause comes before the independent clause, comma. That's comma rule number 1, right? That's comma rule number 1 that we talked about on page 235.
Mhm. We are going to have that on the exam or no?
No,
Oh, thank you.
I'll give you more practice, but honestly, most of your sentences are already doing this. I just think it's really important for you guys to see these rules, right?
Yes.
And I'll give you a little more practice in Canvas, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm tired. We'll see if we do grammar writing 4 or not. We might just have more practice and stuff. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, let's just practice more.
I think so too. The final
general
exam,
review.
but again, remember the final exam, I'm going to make you write. So my hope, I don't grade your grammar for the final exam, but you'll get a chance to do this, right? To really focus on some of this stuff when you write new sentences. So I'm only going to have you write something new one more time. That's it. That I can promise. Comma rule number 3, and then we're out of here. Ooh, do we have time? I'll go fast. And then we'll finish up. Comma rule 3, do not insert a comma before a coordinating conjunction when what follows is not an independent clause. Think of comma rule number 3, you guys, as the list rule. This is what we were talking about with our I like pizza, comma, apples, comma, and ice cream. Think of this as the list. For example, sometimes you will see and or but in the middle of a sentence, but what follows is not an independent clause, like in these examples. I slept in too late and missed my 8 o'clock class again. I should go to class regularly, but just can't get up that early. I have the fanboy, but I don't have another subject, right?
Mhm.
I have but I don't have another repeated pronoun. And this is what she points out here. If you look carefully at the bracketed portions, you will see that they do not have subjects. They begin with another verb because the subject from the beginning of the sentence, I, is assumed for the second part. But here she shows you the difference. I should go to class regularly, comma, but I just can't get up that early. Both versions are grammatically correct, but the presence or absence, that means if you include or do not include the second I, that is what determines whether or not a comma is needed.
Mm.
And these, you guys, are the 3 rules. Now, notice she doesn't include the cities and the countries example. That's kind of a weird specific one, but these 3 rules, right? Comma after an introductory element before the subject of the first independent clause. Always use a comma before a fanboy when connecting 2 independent clauses. And don't use a comma if you don't have 2 clauses, right? Those are the big 3 rules that she's talking about here. And now again, I know that I went through this very quickly, but this tutorial, I think it's only like 12 pages. It starts here on 231 and she keeps it very short. It finishes really on page 230. It's only 8 pages with a longer practice. Read it another few times, right? Watch this video with me and we'll practice more next week. But these are the most common errors students make. And if I had to just pick one, the most common error that I see, it's this one. Comma splice is the biggest problem that I see every single year. And like I said, my brother lives in San Francisco. He just turned 26. When he has me check his, applications or work emails, entries, I'm like, comma splice, Sean, you got a comma splice. So this error is not just learners, right? It's a really common error. So just be aware of those comma splices.
So the last sentence is correct because I enjoyed the class, comma, I learned a lot. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is.
Okay,
And this is also correct.
I learned a lot because, but no comma.
Exactly right.
But over there are 2 independent clauses. I learned a lot. I enjoyed the class.
Subordinator.
There it
Subordinator.
is. Say it,
Because
Barbara.
the subordinator. Okay, you're right. Okay.
Not a fanboy. That's
Thank you.
exactly right.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. And again, this is one of those times when a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about for 3 months comes together, right? Like, I promise I wasn't going to make you talk about subordinators and coordinators for no reason. You see, it all kind of comes together when you're writing more interesting, I would say, more interesting sentences, right? You see how all the puzzle pieces kind of fit together. Absolutely. And it's weird, right? In week 11, if I were like, hey, subordinators are very important for commas, it's like, Jeff, I don't even know I don't know what that means, right? But after a little while and practice, you can start to see, well, they are connected in a certain way, right? They are connected when we think about making sentences with 2 or 3 different clauses, Yeah. So next week, well, we're at time. So all I'll say is I have another new lesson in Canvas. It's really short and really easy. It's just review. So lesson 17 is commas, clauses, and phrases. It's very easy. So it's just going to be more like a review. I want to see how we're feeling next week I will give you the answer key for grammar writing 3, and then we'll just talk and see what we need. So I'll just show you real quick the example of the student view. It's very easy. I need to fix that. I'll show you later. Wait, let me go out of, let me leave student view.
It was funny how you did, yeah.
Teacher was on teacher, Teacher was on spring break as well. For example, this is to get you ready for comma stuff. So for example, correctly identify the group of words. So the group of words is the rabbit under the bushes. Is that a phrase, an independent clause, or a dependent clause?
But we have a
Independent
phrase.
clause.
Independent?
The
Okay.
rabbit under the bushes.
Dependent,
have a
because we don't know
verb.
what.
It should say the
Beatrice,
verb.
say it again. Beatrice, say it again. Say it again. Say it again.
It doesn't have the verb. It should say
So-
the rabbit is under the bushes.
So if there's no verb, is it a clause?
It's not a clause, okay? It's
No,
but it's
no. Is,
Phrase.
if there's no verb, is it a clause?
It's phrase.
no,
Thank you.
no,
Ándale.
it's not.
That's it. That's it. So that's what this is, just that type of practice, right? It's just a chance for you to think about these and get you ready to notice the commas, right? So for example, what's the next one?
Means
Correctly
minus
identify.
1 point.
Although the dog jumped on the counter,
Although the dog jumped on the counter, phrase, independent or dependent?
Dependent clause.
Dependent.
Why?
Because out of.
Yes, because just like Barbara said about because, we've got a subordinator, right?
Mhm.
okay?
Correctly identify the parrot bit, the parrot is like a bird. The parrot bit a chunk out of my ear.
Ouch.
Independent.
Yeah, that's a bad day.
Independent.
Yeah, exactly. Andale, you're on it. You guys are on it. You guys are on it. So that's all this is. It's not a quiz. I think I've given you 3 or 4 attempts. So it's really just, again, a chance for you to see how clauses are important for understanding commas. That's what this
Mhm.
lesson is. That's all it's for.
I'm going to review my clauses
Yep.
class.
Yeah, buddy. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording because it's even 1 minute after, and then I will say goodbye to you all. I'm gonna stop my sharing.
Good.